The sky above New York City turned black at exactly 3 in the afternoon when the alien ships arrived. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking coffee in his office at the Earth Defense Force headquarters when the alarm started screaming. He dropped his cup and ran to the window. What he saw made his blood turn cold. Massive crystalline ships floated in the air like dark clouds. They were bigger than any building he had ever seen. The ships had sharp edges that caught the sunlight and threw it back in strange colors. More ships appeared over every major city on Earth within minutes. London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, all of them had the same dark visitors hanging in their skies. Jake grabbed his radio and called the command center. General Lisa Kane was already there when he arrived. She looked tired and scared. Admiral Steve Collins stood next to her, staring at the screens that showed the alien fleet. Nobody was talking. They all knew what this meant. The aliens had been watching Earth for months. Small scout ships had been spotted near the moon and around Mars. Earth scientists had tried to make contact, but the aliens never answered. Now they were here, and they had brought enough firepower to destroy the planet 10 times over. The first message came an hour later. Every television, radio, and computer screen on Earth showed the same image. It was a creature that looked like a giant insect walking on 2 legs. It had 4 arms, each one ending in claws that could tear through steel. Its head was covered in hard plates like armor, and its eyes glowed red in the dark. When it spoke, its voice sounded like metal grinding against stone. "I am Admiral Kethver of the Zephyrian Dominion," the creature said. Its mouth moved strangely, showing teeth that were sharp as knives. "Your species has been judged. You have 72 hours to surrender completely. Every government, every military, every person on this planet must bow down to the Dominion. If you refuse, we will destroy your world and everyone on it." The message played 3 times and then stopped. The screens went black. Around the world, people started to panic. Some ran to their homes to be with their families. Others stood in the streets and stared up at the alien ships. A few tried to fight back with whatever weapons they had, but their bullets bounced off the ships like raindrops. Jake sat in the emergency meeting room with the other military leaders. They had been talking for hours, but nobody had any good ideas. Earth's space fleet was tiny compared to what the aliens had brought. The humans had 12 ships that could fight in space. The aliens had over 300, and each one was bigger and stronger than anything Earth had ever built. "We can't win a fight," Admiral Collins said. His voice was quiet and sad. "They have weapons that can crack planets in half. Our best missiles would barely scratch their hull plating." General Kane nodded. She had been reading reports from around the world. Every country's military was saying the same thing. The aliens were too strong. There was no point in fighting, but Jake was thinking about something else. He had studied every video of the alien broadcasts. He had watched Admiral Kethver speak, and he had noticed something important. The alien didn't just threaten to destroy Earth, it asked for surrender. It wanted Earth's governments to give up and bow down. "Why do they want us to surrender?" Jake asked. "If they just wanted to destroy us, they would have done it already." The other officers looked at him like he was crazy. General Kane shook her head. "They want to make an example of us. Show other planets what happens when you don't surrender fast enough." But Jake wasn't convinced. He had read about the Dominion. Before they had conquered dozens of worlds over the past 100 years, they always followed the same pattern. They would arrive at a planet, demand surrender, fight a short war if needed, and then take control. But they never just destroyed everything. They always kept some of the local population alive to work as slaves. "They need something from us," Jake said. "Workers, soldiers, maybe our technology. If they just wanted us dead, we would already be dead." Admiral Collins stood up and walked to the window. The alien ships were still hanging in the sky, dark and silent. "Even if you're right, what difference does it make? We still can't fight them." Jake was quiet for a long time. He was thinking about his daughter Lucy, who lived in California with her mother. He was thinking about all the people on Earth who would become slaves if the aliens won. He was thinking about human history. and how his species had always found a way to fight back against impossible odds? Finally, he spoke. What if we don't try to fight their ships? What if we fight them? What do you mean? General Kane asked. Jake turned to face the other officers. His eyes were bright with a dangerous idea. The Dominion follows rules. They have ceremonies and traditions. They demand formal surrenders because that's how their society works. What if we use that against them? He walked to the wall screen and brought up everything they knew about Dominion culture. The aliens were warriors who respected strength above everything else. Their leaders earned their positions by fighting and winning against their enemies. When they conquered a planet, they held formal ceremonies to show their power. They're going to want a surrender ceremony, Jake said. Something public, something that shows the whole galaxy that they beat us. They'll bring their leaders down to Earth, or they'll take our leaders up to their ships. Admiral Collins was starting to understand. You want to attack them during the ceremony? I want to kill their admiral, Jake said. The words hung in the air like poison. In their culture, if you kill a leader in combat, you earn the right to take their place. If we can kill Admiral Kethver in front of his own people, we might be able to force them to negotiate instead of just enslaving us. General Kane stared at him. That's suicide. Even if you could somehow kill their admiral, they would just kill you and destroy the planet anyway. Maybe, Jake said, but maybe not. If we can prove that humans are dangerous enough to kill their leaders, they might decide we're worth keeping alive as allies instead of slaves. The room was quiet. Everyone knew it was a crazy plan. The chances of success were almost zero. But it was the only plan they had that didn't end with humanity on its knees. Jake looked around the table at the other officers. I'm not ordering anyone to do this. I'm asking for volunteers for a mission that will probably get us all killed. To his surprise, Admiral Collins raised his hand first. Then General Kane. Within an hour, they had a team of 20 people who were willing to try the impossible. The next morning brought chaos to every government on Earth. Presidents and prime ministers held emergency meetings while their people demanded answers. Some countries wanted to fight the aliens no matter what. Others begged for immediate surrender. The United Nations building in New York became a war zone of shouting diplomats and crying civilians. Jake Morrison ignored all of it. While the world's leaders argued about surrender terms, he was in a secret military bunker 50 feet underground. He sat across from Sergeant Amy Foster, one of the best snipers in the Earth Defense Force. Next to her was Lieutenant Ben Clark, an explosives expert who had fought in 3 different wars. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Amy said. She was a small woman with short brown hair and calm green eyes. You want us to sneak weapons onto an alien spaceship, kill their admiral in front of hundreds of his soldiers, and then somehow survive long enough to negotiate? That's the basic idea, Jake replied. He spread out blueprints of human weapons on the table. But we're not sneaking traditional weapons on board. They'll scan us for metal and explosives. Ben leaned forward. He was a big man with rough hands that were covered in small scars from handling dangerous materials. So what do we use? Harsh language? Jake smiled for the first time in days. Plasma charges. The same technology we use in our ship engines, but concentrated into small devices. They'll look like data pads or communication devices to their scanners. Amy picked up one of the fake data pads. It felt exactly like the real thing, but Jake had shown her the hidden switch that would turn it into a bomb. How much damage will these do? Enough to take out their shield generators and create confusion throughout their ship, Jake said. The real weapon will be this. He pulled out a combat knife with a black blade. Good old-fashioned steel. Sharp enough to cut through their natural armor if you know where to hit them. The plan was taking shape. Earth's governments would accept the Dominion's demand for a formal surrender ceremony. The aliens would bring their leaders to oversee the event, probably on their flagship. During the ceremony, Jake's team would create chaos with the plasma charges while he challenged Admiral Kethver to single combat. It was insane, but it was their only chance. Over the next 2 days, they studied everything they could about Dominion culture, The aliens had strict rules about honor and combat. Their society was built around the idea that the strongest should lead. When two Dominion warriors fought, the winner earned the right to take everything the loser owned, including their rank and their followers. The problem was that no human had ever fought a Dominion warrior before. They didn't know how strong the aliens were, or how fast, or what their weaknesses might be. All they had were videos from other planets that had been conquered. In those videos, Dominion soldiers moved like deadly shadows, cutting through enemy forces without taking a single wound. "Look at this," Amy said. She was studying a video from a planet called Zarian that had fallen to the Dominion 5 years earlier. Their armor covers most of their body, but there are gaps at the joints, here where the arm connects to the shoulder, and here at the back of the neck. Jake watched the video over and over. Admiral Kethfer was bigger than the other Dominion soldiers with thicker armor and longer claws, but he still had the same weak spots. If Jake could get close enough, and if he was fast enough, he might be able to land a killing blow. Ben was working on the timing. "We need to disable their shields first, then create enough confusion that their soldiers won't shoot you immediately. I can rig the plasma charges to go off in sequence. First the shield generators, then the weapon systems, then the communication arrays. How long will we have?" Jake asked. "Maybe 3 minutes before they get their systems back online," Ben said. "After that, we're all dead." 3 minutes to kill an alien admiral and convince his army not to destroy Earth. It wasn't much time, but it would have to be enough while Jake's team prepared for their suicide mission. The rest of Earth's military was making their own plans. They couldn't help during the ceremony, but they could make sure the aliens knew that humanity wouldn't go down without a fight. Every ship in Earth's fleet was being loaded with nuclear weapons. If Jake's plan failed, they would ram the alien ships and try to take as many of them down as possible. General Kane visited Jake on the night before the ceremony. She looked older than she had just 3 days ago. The stress of knowing that her species might be enslaved or destroyed was wearing on everyone. "The aliens sent their terms," she said. "The ceremony will be held on Admiral Kethfer's flagship tomorrow at noon. You'll be part of a delegation of 50 people representing all of Earth's governments." Jake nodded. He had expected that. The Dominion liked their surrender ceremonies to be big public events. They would broadcast it across the galaxy to show other worlds what happened when you resisted the Dominion. "What about weapons?" he asked. "They'll scan everyone before boarding," Kane said. "But they're allowing us to bring ceremonial items and communication devices. Your fake data pads should pass their scans." That night, Jake called his daughter Lucy. She was 14 years old and living with her mother in San Diego. He hadn't told her about the mission, but she knew something was wrong. "Dad, are you going to be okay?" she asked. Her voice was small and scared. Jake closed his eyes. He wanted to lie to her, to tell her that everything would be fine, but he couldn't do it. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I'm going to do everything I can to keep you safe. I love you, Dad." "I love you too, Lucy, more than anything in the world." After the call ended, Jake sat alone in his quarters and thought about what he was about to do. In less than 12 hours, he would be standing on an alien warship, surrounded by creatures that could kill him with their bare hands. He would challenge their leader to a fight that he would probably lose. And if he failed, his daughter and everyone else on Earth would become slaves. But there was another possibility. If he succeeded, if he could somehow kill Admiral Kethfer and force the Dominion to negotiate, then humanity might have a chance. They might not just survive, but thrive among the stars. Jake picked up his combat knife and tested its edge against his thumb. A drop of blood appeared where the blade touched his skin. It was sharp enough to cut through alien armor if he could get close enough to use it. Tomorrow he would find out if humans were as tough as they claimed to be. The shuttle ride to Admiral Kethfer's flagship felt like the longest 30 minutes of Jake Morrison's life. He sat between Amy Foster and Ben Clark, trying to look calm while his heart hammered against his ribs. Around them, 47 other humans sat in silence. Most of them were government officials who thought they were going to a simple surrender ceremony. They had no idea that 3 of their fellow passengers were carrying enough explosive power to cripple an alien warship. Jake could feel the fake datapad pressing against his chest where he had hidden it inside his formal jacket. It looked exactly like the communication devices the other delegates carried, but Ben had packed it with enough concentrated plasma energy to blow a hole through the ship's hull. Amy had 2 more devices hidden in her briefcase, and Ben carried another in his boot. The alien ship grew larger as they approached. It was shaped like a massive crystal, with sharp edges that caught the sunlight and threw it back in rainbow colors. The hull was black as space, but it seemed to move and shift like liquid metal. Jake had seen pictures of Dominion ships before, but being this close to one made his mouth go dry. "Remember the plan," he whispered to Amy and Ben. "Wait for my signal, then 30 seconds later, hit the shield generators first." Amy nodded without looking at him. She was staring out the window at the alien ship with the focused calm of a professional soldier. Ben was checking his watch and counting under his breath. In a few minutes, they would either be heroes or dead. The shuttle docked with a soft bump. Alien soldiers were waiting for them in the docking bay. They were smaller than Admiral Kethfer, but still twice the size of a human. Their armor was polished to a mirror shine, and their weapons hummed with energy. One of them stepped forward and spoke in broken English. "Welcome to Dominion Flagship Eternal Victory," the soldier said. Its voice sounded like rocks falling. "Down a hill. You will follow. No sudden movements. No talking." The human delegates were led through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls were covered in strange symbols that glowed with their own light. Every few hundred feet they passed display cases filled with weapons and armor from conquered worlds. Jake recognized a few items from Earth's history: a samurai sword, a Roman helmet, an American flag. Trophies from planets that had already fallen to the Dominion. The ceremony hall was bigger than a football stadium. The ceiling was so high that Jake couldn't see the top, and the walls stretched away into shadows. Hundreds of alien soldiers lined the sides of the room, their weapons ready and their red eyes watching every movement. At the far end of the hall, Admiral Kethfer sat on a throne made from the bones of dead creatures. Jake had studied videos of the alien Admiral, but seeing him in person was terrifying. Kethfer was 9 feet tall and built like a tank. His 4 arms ended in claws that could tear through steel, and his armor was covered in scars from 1,000 battles. When he saw the human delegates, he showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. "So these are the humans," Kethfer said. His voice boomed through the hall like thunder. "You are smaller than I expected, weaker looking. It is hard to believe you gave us any trouble at all." The alien soldiers laughed. It sounded like metal grinding against stone. Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting angry now would ruin everything. The surrender ceremony began with a speech about the power of the Dominion and the weakness of human resistance. Admiral Kethfer talked about the hundreds of worlds he had conquered and the millions of soldiers he had killed. He described how humanity would serve the Dominion as workers and slaves, and how their children would forget they had ever been free. Jake listened to every word while he waited for the right moment. The ceremony had to follow traditional patterns, or the other aliens wouldn't accept what happened next. He needed to wait until Admiral Kethfer called for the formal surrender, then he could make his challenge. "And now," the Admiral said, raising one of his 4 arms, "let the leaders of this pathetic species kneel before the might of the Dominion." That was Jake's signal. He stepped forward from the group of human delegates, his hand moving slowly toward the hidden datapad. "I have something to say first." The hall fell silent. Hundreds of alien eyes turned toward Jake. Admiral Kethfer leaned forward on his bone throne, his red eyes glowing in the dim light. "A human dares to speak without permission?" the Admiral asked. "You will learn proper respect soon enough." "I challenge you to single combat," Jake said. His voice carried clearly through the huge hall. "By the laws of the Dominion, I claim the right to face you in honorable battle." The silence that followed was so complete that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Even the alien soldiers seemed shocked. No conquered species had ever made such a demand before. Admiral Kethver slowly stood up from his throne. At his full height, he towered over everyone else in the room. His claws scraped against his armor as he flexed his four arms. You know our laws, little human, interesting, but you do not understand what you are asking for. I have killed champions. From a dozen worlds, their bones decorate my throne. Then one more shouldn't make any difference, Jake replied. Unless the great Admiral Kethver is afraid of a weak human. The insult hit home. Kethver's eyes flared brighter, and his mandibles clicked together in anger. Around the hall, alien soldiers began to whisper among themselves. In Dominion culture, refusing a formal challenge was considered cowardice. Very well, the Admiral said. I accept your challenge. When I kill you, your species will serve the Dominion with no hope of resistance. Jake nodded and gave Amy and Ben the signal. It was a small gesture, just touching his ear, but they had practiced it 100 times. 30 seconds later, the first plasma charge would go off. Admiral Kethver stepped down from his throne and walked to the center of the hall. The alien soldiers formed a circle around them, eager to watch their leader tear apart the foolish human. Jake walked to meet him, his hand now resting on the combat knife. Hidden under his jacket, the two opponents faced each other in the center of the vast hall. Admiral Kethver was more than twice Jake's size, with natural armor and four arms ending in deadly claws. Jake was just a human with a knife and a desperate plan. Any last words before you die? The Admiral asked. Jake looked up at the towering alien and smiled. Yeah, Duck. The first explosion lit up the hall like a second sun. The plasma charge that Amy had placed near the shield generators exploded with the force of a lightning bolt. The entire ship shook as emergency lights began flashing throughout the ceremony hall. Alien soldiers stumbled and shouted in confusion as sparks rained down from damaged ceiling panels. The carefully planned surrender ceremony turned into chaos in seconds. Jake didn't waste time watching the explosion. The moment the charge went off, he threw himself sideways and rolled behind Admiral Kethver's bone throne. The alien admiral spun around, his forearms reaching for weapons that weren't there. In the Dominion culture, formal combat was fought with natural weapons only, claws, teeth, and strength. Coward, Kethver roared. You use tricks and explosions. Like a weak species. I use whatever works, Jake shouted back, pulling his combat knife from its hidden sheath. The black blade caught the flickering emergency lights as he stepped out from behind the throne. That's what makes humans dangerous. The second explosion came from Ben's charge near the weapon systems. More sparks flew through the air, in half. The lights in the hall went dark. The alien soldiers raised their energy rifles, but the weapons wouldn't fire. Ben had done his job perfectly. The ship's main power grid was crippled. Admiral Kethver charged across the hall like an angry bull. His claws scraped against the metal floor, leaving deep scratches in the alien steel. Jake waited until the last second, then dove to one side. The Admiral's momentum carried him past, and Jake slashed with his knife at the gap in the armor behind Kethver's knee. The blade cut deep, and dark blue blood splattered across the floor. The alien Admiral stumbled but didn't fall. He spun around and backhanded Jake with one of his forearms. The blow sent Jake flying across the hall to crash into a group of watching alien soldiers. Jake rolled to his feet, spitting blood from his split lip. His ribs felt like they were on fire, but nothing seemed broken. The alien soldiers around him were reaching for backup weapons, but Amy's third charge went off right on schedule. This explosion took out the communication systems, and the hall plunged into near darkness. In the flickering light, Jake could see Admiral Kethver limping toward him. The cut behind his knee was bleeding heavily, but it would take more than that to stop a Dominion warrior. The alien's red eyes glowed like coals in the darkness. Clever little human, Kethver hissed. But tricks will not save you now. Jake circled around the Admiral, staying just out of reach of those deadly claws. He had studied the videos of Dominion warriors, and he knew their strengths and weaknesses. They were incredibly strong and tough, but they weren't as fast as humans. Their natural armor protected them from most attacks, but it also made them slower and less flexible. The Admiral lunged forward with all four arms spread wide, trying to grab Jake in a crushing embrace. Jake dropped to his knees and slid forward, passing between Kethver's legs and slashing upward with his knife. The blade caught the alien in the soft spot where his armor didn't quite meet, and more blue blood flowed. Kethver screamed in pain and rage. He spun around faster than Jake expected, catching him with a backhand blow that sent him tumbling across the floor. This time, Jake felt something crack in his chest, and pain shot through his left arm. The human delegates were pressed against the far wall, too scared to move. The alien soldiers were shouting orders to each other, trying to restore power and communications. But their attention was focused on Jake and their Admiral. Locked in their deadly dance in the center of the hall, Jake pushed himself to his feet, favoring his injured arm. Admiral Kethver was bleeding from several wounds now, but he was still incredibly dangerous. The alien charged again, and this time Jake couldn't dodge fast enough. One of Kethver's claws raked across his back, tearing through his jacket and cutting deep gashes in his skin. Jake stumbled forward, nearly dropping his knife. He was losing too much blood, and the alien was barely slowing down. He needed to end this fight quickly, or he would die here in the darkness of an alien ship. Admiral Kethver sensed victory. He moved in slowly, savoring the moment before the kill. "Your species shows more courage than I expected," he said. "I will make your death quick as a reward." "Thanks," Jake gasped, "but I'm not planning to die today." He waited until the Admiral was close enough to touch, then threw himself forward in a desperate attack. Instead of trying to stab with his knife, he grabbed onto Kethver's armor and pulled himself up the alien's massive body. Kethver tried to shake him off, but Jake held on with all his remaining strength. The alien Admiral reached back with all four arms, trying to grab the human clinging to his back, but the angle was wrong, and his own armor got in the way. Jake climbed higher, ignoring the pain from his wounds, until he was level with Kethver's neck. The gap in the armor was right there, just behind the alien's skull. Jake raised his knife and drove it down with every ounce of strength he had left. The black blade punched through the soft spot and into Admiral Kethver's brain. The alien Admiral went rigid for a moment, all four arms frozen in mid-reach. Then he toppled forward like a falling tree, crashing to the floor with Jake still clinging to his back. Blue blood pooled around them in the flickering emergency lights. Jake rolled off the dead alien and struggled to his feet. His knife was still buried in Kethver's skull, the handle sticking up like a flag of victory. Around the hall, hundreds of alien soldiers stood in stunned silence. Their supreme leader was dead, killed by a creature they considered weak and inferior. Jake looked around at the watching aliens, then down at Admiral Kethver's corpse. The alien's red eyes had gone dark, and his mandibles hung open in death. Jake grabbed the knife handle and twisted it, making sure the job was finished. Then he did something that would be remembered across the galaxy for centuries to come. He drew his knife across the alien's neck, cutting through skin and bone until the head came free from the body. Dark blue blood covered his hands as he lifted Admiral Kethver's severed head by its mandibles. The ceremony hall was so quiet that Jake could hear the blood dripping from the alien's neck onto the metal floor. He walked slowly to the bone throne, where the surrender documents were waiting on a small table. Every alien eye in the hall followed his movement. Jake raised the severed head high above the table, then hurled it down with all his strength. It hit the metal surface with a wet thud that echoed through the vast hall. Admiral Kethver's dead. Eyes stared up at the ceiling while blue blood spread across the surrender papers. Jake wiped his bloody hands on his torn jacket and looked around the hall at the stunned alien soldiers. His voice was calm and steady when he spoke. "Now, let's discuss terms." The silence that followed Jake's words stretched for what felt like hours. Admiral Kethver's severed head stared up from the table with dead red eyes, while blue blood slowly dripped onto the floor. Around the ceremony hall, hundreds of alien soldiers stood frozen, their weapons useless without power, their minds struggling to process what they had just witnessed. Finally, Sub-Admiral Vextel stepped forward from the crowd of Dominion officers. He was smaller than Kethver had been, with only 3 arms and armor that showed fewer battle scars. But his eyes burned with intelligence, and Jake could see that this alien was thinking fast about what had just happened. "You killed our Admiral." "In honorable combat," Vextel said. His voice was quieter than Kethver's had been, but it carried clearly through the hall. "By the ancient laws of the Dominion, this gives you certain rights." Jake nodded, trying not to show how much pain he was in. The cuts on his back were bleeding freely, and his ribs felt like someone was stabbing him with every breath. But he couldn't show weakness now, not when everything depended on the next few minutes. "I know your laws," Jake said. "I claim leadership of this fleet by right of combat." A wave of angry chittering swept through the alien soldiers. Several of them raised their claws and showed their teeth, but none of them moved forward. They were bound by the same laws that Jake was invoking. Sub-Admiral Vextel held up his arms for silence. When the hall was quiet again, he spoke carefully. "The law is clear. You have earned the right to make demands. But you are not Dominion. You cannot truly lead our forces." "Then we negotiate," Jake said. He walked slowly around the table, keeping Admiral Kethver's head between himself and the alien officers. "Your Admiral came here to accept humanity's surrender. Instead, he's dead, and your fleet is in chaos. I'm offering you a way out that saves face for everyone." Amy Foster and Ben Clark moved up beside Jake, their own wounds visible but not slowing them down. The 3 humans stood together in the center of the alien ship, surrounded by creatures that could tear them apart in seconds. But they had just proven that humans were not helpless prey. Vextel was clearly thinking hard. As second-in-command, he was now the leader of the entire Dominion fleet. But if he simply rejected Jake's demands and ordered his soldiers to kill the humans, he would be breaking sacred laws that had held the Dominion together for thousands of years. Other species in the Empire would see that the Dominion's own rules meant nothing, and rebellions would spread across the galaxy, on the other hand. If he accepted Jake's authority, he would be admitting that a human was the equal of a Dominion admiral. That would also cause problems throughout the Empire. "What terms do you propose?" Vextel asked finally. Jake had been thinking about this moment for days. He knew he had only one chance to get this right. Earth becomes a partner in the Dominion, not a conquered territory. We keep our own governments and our own military. In exchange, we provide soldiers and tactical advice for future Dominion campaigns. The alien officers began chittering among themselves again. Jake could hear anger and confusion in their voices, but also something else, interest. The way he had killed Admiral Kethver had impressed them, even though they didn't want to admit it. "Humans are skilled warriors," Jake continued. "We've been fighting wars against each other for thousands of years. We know things about combat that could be useful to the Dominion, but only as allies, not as slaves." Vextel was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked the question Jake had been hoping for. "What proof do you offer that humans would be valuable?" "Allies?" Jake smiled, though it hurt his split lip. "You're looking at the proof. 3 humans with simple weapons just disabled your flagship and killed your supreme commander. Imagine what we could do if we were working with you instead of against you." The negotiations that followed lasted for 6 days. Jake, Amy, and Ben were given medical treatment and quarters on the alien ship while diplomats from Earth joined the talks. Admiral Kethver's head remained on the table throughout the discussions, a grim reminder of what humans were capable of when pushed too far. The final agreement was unlike anything in Dominion history. Earth would become the first world to join the Empire as an equal partner. Human forces would serve alongside Dominion troops, but under their own officers and following their own tactics. In return, humanity would have access to Dominion technology and protection from other alien threats. Jake was given the rank of Admiral in the combined fleet, with Admiral Kethver's severed head mounted in a place of honor in his new office. It was a gruesome trophy, but it served its purpose. Every alien who visited Jake's office could see what happened to those who underestimated humanity. The news of Earth's negotiated partnership spread quickly throughout the galaxy. Other conquered species began to whisper about rebellion, wondering if they too could fight their way to freedom. Some of the Dominion's enemies sent secret messages to Earth, hoping to form alliances against their mutual foe, but the most important change was in how the galaxy saw humanity. They were no longer just another primitive species waiting to be conquered. They were the creatures who had killed a Dominion admiral with nothing but courage and a knife. Within a year, human tactical advisors were serving on Dominion ships throughout the galaxy. Their unconventional methods and willingness to take desperate risks made them valuable assets in the Empire's ongoing wars. But more importantly, they remained free. Earth's children would grow up knowing that their parents had refused to kneel. Even when faced with impossible odds, Jake often stood in his office aboard the combined fleet's flagship, looking out at the stars while Admiral Kethfer's head watched from its place on his desk. The alien's dead eyes served as a constant reminder that sometimes the best way to negotiate was to throw your enemy's severed head on the table and ask what they were willing to discuss. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about humanity. They looked weak and small compared to other species, but they had something that made them incredibly dangerous. They refused to give up, even when giving up was the smart thing to do. They would rather die fighting than live as slaves. And sometimes, just sometimes, that stubborn human refusal to surrender could change the course of galactic history. One severed head at a time.